In part 1 of Mark's case, we spoke with his cousin Lauren, who shared what happened the day he went missing, the investigation that followed, and how the case impacted her life as the years passed and it eventually went cold. In this episode, we feature a woman with a compelling connection to Mark's case, someone who may hold a key lead that could help bring answers. We also introduce another figure, whose actions may help explain why the case has struggled to produce even a single solid lead. For privacy reasons, names have been changed to protect potential witnesses and other individuals of interest. It should also be noted that no one has ever been charged in connection with Mark's disappearance, and anyone mentioned is considered innocent until proven guilty. Lastly, we want to emphasize that this case is real. It involves a real family and real people whose lives have been deeply impacted. We ask that you respect their privacy and allow them to continue in peace, as this experience has already been difficult enough for them. Join your host Pat Draven and I, Katie Hayes, as we dive into the complex disappearance of Mark Himebaugh and explore the troubling questions that still surround it. This is the story of Mark Himebaugh, and this is They Disappeared. During Thanksgiving break in 1991, Mark Himebaugh, an 11-year-old boy, went missing. And the 3 decades since, police have never publicly identified a primary suspect. Instead, they have only named individuals they wish to speak with, people who may have relevant information. While many believe there have been persons of interest considered behind the scenes, only one sketch has ever been released. It is widely thought to depict Thomas Buckcabbage, though not everyone agrees that he is the individual shown. In this next interview, a woman named Susan explains how and where she became involved in Mark's case. Throughout this episode, we'll hear from both Susan and Mark's cousin Lauren as their stories begin to intersect. The day before Mark's disappearance, Susan, a North Carolina native, was visiting family in Pennsylvania when she was involved in a serious car accident. She then had to undergo major surgery the following day, the same day Mark went missing.
The day before Mark went missing, I was in a major car accident in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Living in North Wilmington at the time with my boyfriend, I was thrown from the vehicle. So I was rushed to a hospital and then transferred down to Philadelphia, and they had to do a major operation. But the day after that accident, my boyfriend was MIA. He wasn't at the hospital. I thought it to be extremely odd. When I came out of surgery, of course, it was all over the news because when you're in the hospital, you really didn't have anything better to do.
After being discharged from the hospital, Susan continued to follow Mark's case closely. Mark's cousin Lauren, whom we heard from in part 1, remained involved as the investigation went cold. The lead investigator, Rich McHale, stayed in contact with the family, regularly checking in, requesting information and photos, and meeting often with Mark's mother.
There were several investigators in Mark's case. It was always an open case. It was never closed. So as people would retire, new people would take on the case. And when Rich McHale came on the case, he took more of an interest than anybody had before. He had gone over to my aunt's house and went through all of the pictures, and he started a Facebook page. On the Facebook page, he started providing like home movies. And sometimes there were home movies of me that I had only remember seeing before. I was like, oh my God, there I am on Rich's Facebook page. And at first I didn't think much of it. I thought, well, great, this guy wants to solve the case and find Mark.
Rich McHale, who continued to support efforts to find Mark even after retiring, went on to host events across the country to raise awareness about the case.
Things started to get a little odd. He started to seem to me to be a little obsessive. He started to use my cousin Mark's picture on his Facebook page as his profile picture. So I remember seeing his Peace for Mark tour. He's going out cross country. And I just remember at this one point, he had my little baby cousin Mark's picture on a lanyard around his neck. And he was at a bar. And he was drunk, and he was with these younger women who were also drinking. And he was just like, hey, I'm here with so-and-so and so-and-so. And they're like, yeah, he's from Mark, baby. I know that at one point my own mom was like, I think Rich is something off going on with this whole thing. And I said, yeah. Now, somewhere in this time frame, he retired. The thing is, I don't remember him ever telling us this, so I can't tell you exactly when he retired.
He also wrote a book titled Where's Mark, in which he discussed details surrounding the case and the investigation. The book, retired investigator Rich McHale wrote, explores the ongoing investigation, new leads, and other findings that have emerged over the 30 years Mark has been missing. It also includes information about the family. Some of it's sensitive and not fully confirmed.
In 2021, August, side note, I had a catastrophic house fire. Okay. I lost almost everything. But somewhere not long after the fire, Rich contacted me and asked me if he could have my consent to use my story in his book. And I said, well, what am I consenting to? And he wouldn't tell me. And I said, you know, in mental health, informed consent is like you inform somebody what they're consenting to. He's like, okay, well, I'll send you the first chapter. I'm like, okay. And he sent me the first chapter, which certainly didn't have I didn't see anything about me or my story. I got back to him again and I said, Rich, I don't see where like this first chapter is explaining anything. In the meantime, I called Matt. I said, Matt, I just have a bad feeling about this book. I don't know what he's putting in it. And Matt's like, great. So he contacted Rich and said, Rich, you know, what is this book going to be about? Like, what are you including in it? And Rich was like, let's all have a meeting. We'll all sit down. We'll have a, sit down chat. Okay, great. But he never would arrange that sit down chat. And at one point, Matt was like, listen, Rich, like this book, are you going to embarrass my family? Like, what is in it? And Rich basically said, you know what, Matt, I've never heard you talk to me this way. But if you're going to act this way, then you're just going to have to wait to read the book like everybody else. And boom, blocked Matt, blocked me. No access, and we're still blocked from his page to this day.
After Lauren was blocked on social media, Rich maintained contact with Mark's mother, and eventually developed a relationship with Lauren's mother, who was living with her sister, Mark's mother, at the time. During this time, the family was not aligned on Rich's work on the book. Some members had more information than others, and Lauren was particularly hesitant about his motives and what would ultimately be included. Although Mark's mother maintained that she was aware of what he was writing, no one in the family was notified when the book was released, nor were they given a copy beforehand.
I got a phone call Christmas Day, 2021. That same friend from long ago called me and said, I'm watching something that I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm like, what? She's like, I see my brother reading a book. I'm like, okay, that's funny. She's like, yeah, he's reading a book, Lauren. And I'm like, which book? She's like, Rich's book. I'm like, what? She's like, the book's out. She's like, the book's out. I immediately called Matt. I was like, you're not gonna believe this. The book's out. Rich's book is out. He's like, what? So I'm just the cousin. If I don't know, that's one thing. But Matthew is the brother.
And he didn't know.
And then he called his mom and she said, yeah, I didn't see a copy of the book. He promised he was going to give me a copy, but I never saw it. He did give her some tidbits about it. As far as I know, she did not get an entire copy of that book before its release.
Susan also read the book, but she had a different reaction that would start to raise even more questions about the overall intent and why it was published in the first place.
I always wondered about the little boy, but fast forward to approximately 2021 when Rich McHale wrote a book, Where is Mark? And I read in the book that he was a special needs child. He attended a special needs school in Cape May. Well, my cousin drove that bus. So I'm starting to think to myself, wow, I wonder why I've never mentioned that he knew the child, or, it just didn't seem, it seemed a little odd to me. okay? After that, I saw Rich McHale on a couple podcasts, and I decided to reach out to him and ask him about the special needs bus, because in Rich's book, he never mentioned the school bus except to say what time Mark was dropped off, which was approximately 2:30 p.m. the day he went missing. And so I decided to reach out to Rich McHale and ask him if he ever talked to the school driver. He kind of dodged the question as far as I was concerned. And I really felt thrown off by the whole thing.
There were reported sightings that led to sketches of a man possibly seen near Mark. But sketches are leads, not proof. Memories fade over time, and descriptions change. And without physical evidence, cases can go cold and stall.
After that, I watched a couple podcasts from 2022 towards the end of 2023. And I started looking at the composite drawing that was circulated to the public. There was one main drawing, and that's the drawing that they claim was, or they thought, when I say they, the authorities, thought was Thomas Buckcavage.
A previous partner of Thomas Buckcavage, a local male prostitute, told police that one of his customers was circulating a video that allegedly showed Mark being assaulted. However, there were never any public reports detailing what the video contained or whether it led to any additional leads in the investigation.
Thomas Buckcavage was said to have been seen in a video assaulting Mark. And the person who came forward was a prostitute, a male prostitute, and he was also an ex-partner of Thomas Buckcavage. So I'm pretty good with comparing drawings to actual faces. The drawing just didn't look like Thomas Buckcavage, and the more I looked at it, the more I said to myself, oh my God, that is Mike, my ex-boyfriend. The guy that was missing, MIA from the hospital, the entire day after my accident, which was the day Mark went missing. So, of course, it was almost surreal. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My brain didn't want to accept what I was seeing. So I had an old photo, and I asked someone to put long hair and heavy glasses on him, because that's the way he looked in the composite. And when that was done, there was no doubt in my mind, okay? It was my ex-boyfriend.
Over the years, media coverage has referenced individuals considered persons of interest, including men with criminal histories involving crimes against children. One name that appears in the reporting is Thomas Buckcavage. There have been allegations and suspicions examined by investigators and journalists, but it must be stated clearly that no one has ever been charged in connection with Mark's disappearance. No one has been convicted, and the case remains unsolved. That distinction matters, because suspicion is not proof, and speculation cannot replace evidence.
Before I saw that composite, I had talked to the prosecutor's office in Cape May. And I asked the detective on the case, and this was around the end of 23. Did anyone question the special needs driver? I mean, he was the last person to drop off Mark before he went missing. I mean, of course, his mother saw him. Of course, she had contact with him, and then he ran out to look at a fire, and she got caught in a roadblock due to the brush fire. So he was sort of on his own for about a good 2 hours. And the detective said to me, well, that's a good question. He said, but I'm going to be off for a while. And when I get back in a couple weeks, I'll reach out to Maureen and see what she knows about the bus driver. Maureen being Mark's mother. Weeks went by, I never heard from the detective, and it must have been close to 2 months afterwards that I reached out to Maureen myself. And I said, Maureen, I have to talk to you about something. I know you don't know me, but I have to ask you, did you know the special needs driver for Mark? She said she didn't, but she did know that there was a bus that dropped him off every day. So I said to her, well, I'm kind of upset because the prosecutor had mentioned to me that he was going to reach out to you and talk to you about it. She said, no one talked to me. And I said, well, that's disappointing. So I started to get a little uneasy about things, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
To top it off, I start to get a hold of any information I could about Mark and that day.
As we mentioned earlier, everyone discussed in this podcast is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. While Susan's information is certainly compelling, it's important to remember that no one has ever been charged in connection with the disappearance of Mark Himebaugh. The individuals Susan mentions were either considered persons of interest for informational purposes, or they were not publicly identified by authorities as having been interviewed or investigated.
There were 2 other composite drawings, one released about a year after the fact by the New Jersey State Police, and the other was in a podcast from Ana Garcia 30 years later. And when I saw the drawing, I couldn't believe it. It was one of Mike's good friends. Now, that man was spotted holding Mark's hand and walking towards Miami Avenue in the Villas, which is rather residential and a little bit more crowded than Del Haven. There's a lot more homes in the Villas. And Mark looked scared. And I saw another podcast by Rich McHale saying that they didn't think the 2 boys that spotted this man holding Mark's hand was credible. They didn't think they were credible. Right. So they didn't release the drawing. And you can imagine how I felt, being able to recognize not only Mike, but this man named Harry that went by Froggy in another composite drawing. And then not too far after that, I was able to get a hold of another drawing who was also very similar to another friend of Mike's named Louis. So I started looking for those guys to see if, I knew Louis had committed suicide in around 2001, so he was no longer around. So I started looking for Harry, and he recently died, and he didn't die until the end of 23 when I started questioning everyone. So now I know all 3 of the composite drawings, and only one was released to the general public, and they claimed that that was Buckhavage. Now, Thomas Buckhavage is in jail, not for Mark Himebaugh's disappearance, but for assaulting other boys. But they had no proof that he was ever in Cape May that day. They had nothing. So they could never arrest him for the disappearance, but yet he was a person of interest. These other guys were all seen with Mark at different locations. One location was at the fire. That was the guy with the ponytail, Louis. The other location, as I mentioned, was walking at the Villas, Miami Avenue, and he was holding Mark's hand, and Mark looked scared. Then the third location was the one that I believe is Mike, where Mike gets out of the car with witnesses. So I'm thinking to myself, why would a man get out of the car with witnesses if he was involved in this thing? Well, he was wearing a wig and glasses, and he looked like Buck Cabbage. So was he trying to set up Buck Cabbage that early in the case? Perhaps. I know these guys. I get practically nothing in return. Nothing. I don't believe anyone was ever questioned. Now, think of it this way. The last guy to drop him off would have been that school bus driver, who I believe is my cousin, because that's what he did. They never questioned that person. They never questioned Mike that I'm aware of. Now, it gets deeper than that, because I'm now finding out that other valid tips were given to the prosecutor's office that were not acted upon. One being, a man reached out to me, and this guy said, I know a guy named George who told me he knows everyone involved in what happened. And I said, you're kidding me. And he said, no. He said he had a few drinks in him when he said it. And he then shut up. He wouldn't open up anymore. And so I said to the guy, did you call anybody? Yes, I called the prosecutor's office. He said, and nothing. The book, which is almost considered the Bible, Where is Mark by Rich McHale, doesn't mention the other two composite drawings. It's almost as if he was leading the public to Thomas Buck Cabbage or Jody, the father.
Gotcha.
So that was concerning because, listen, there's two other guys that were seen with that boy.
Mark Himebaugh remains listed as a missing child. His case is still active. Investigators have continued reviewing the file over the years, including using modern digital tools and AI-assisted analysis to re-examine old information. That tells us something important, that this case has not been forgotten, and many cold cases are solved decades later, when someone finally talks, when evidence is retested, or old information is seen in new light. Birthdays have passed, and holidays have come and gone. Each year marked another stretch of not knowing. Families of the missing often say the hardest part isn't grief, it's the uncertainty. Not knowing where to place your hope, not knowing what to mourn, you're just waiting. There are witness threads in this case that remain unresolved. Public case summaries describe an unidentified child who may have seen something important that day. That individual has never been publicly identified.
Everything that has to do with Mark, these stories, there's people coming forward with different things that aren't getting investigated. It's even been brought up that the girl in the sketch that never was identified might actually be a local girl who lives around here. Are you kidding me? 34 years later, are we going to uncover my own cousin's case with this grassroots involvement? Like, why is this happening? If this is, okay, benefit of the doubt. Maybe they've had this information and it just didn't piece together and they didn't bring it to our attention. And then this, rogue retired detective who, again, to serve and protect. Well, my code of ethics is do no harm.
Yeah.
And for this guy to serve and protect, retiring, you did a lot of harm, buddy.
Yeah.
And then I saw him live in public. I said, you destroyed my family. And he's like, how'd I destroy your family, Lauren? And I was like, you know exactly what you did.
The following are theory lanes, not accusations, not conclusions, just the frameworks investigators and researchers often examine. The brush fire and rerouted traffic meant unfamiliar vehicles and people were in the area. Did that create a rare moment of vulnerability? Who was passing through Delhaven that normally wouldn't be there? Not necessarily family, but someone Mark recognized. A neighbor, perhaps, a local regular, someone who knew routines, and who had credibility with kids in the area. That shoe found near the water, was it a genuine last location? A sign of a struggle, or something staged to misdirect? Does the location match where Mark would naturally wander? Some discussions focus on known offenders in the region at the time. Were there similar attempted abductions? Was someone watching the area? These are investigative questions, not accusations, because the truth still hasn't been confirmed. Today, Mark Himebaugh would be in his 40s, and somewhere, someone knows what happened that November afternoon in 1991. Maybe they saw something, or maybe they heard something, or maybe they dismissed something as unimportant at the time. But small details solve cold cases. So if you have information about Mark Himebaugh's disappearance, authorities urge you to come forward. Even after all these years, answers matter. For Mark, for his family, and for the truth. Thank you for listening to this episode of They Disappeared. It was written and hosted by Pat Draven and produced by Katie Hayes. For more content, visit our website or Facebook pages where you can message us directly.